it's okay, it takes time. I know everything will be alright. The colors will come back again.
Welcome back to Strong, everybody. I'm so excited to bring another amazing guest. Today we are zooming out to New Hampshire in the United States of America, and we're meeting Mackenzie. Welcome to Strong, Mackenzie.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here this evening. Well, it's evening time for me. What time is it there for you?
It's 11:30 in the morning over here.
So it's an okay time. You know, you're not going to hate me for being up too early this morning. I know that you were reached out to by the admin team. Simar reached out to you and asked you to be with us here on the show, and she was so inspired by you and what you stand for and everything that you're going through. And I looked to see the young lady behind the Instagram account, and I realized that not only are you an inspiring young lady, you've decided to take a challenge that you're facing and you've decided to inspire others through a recovery journey. And I just want to start by acknowledging you, Mackenzie, because you're only 18 years old. You're still a young lady, so much to go through yourself. And young people your age are still trying to find themselves. They're still trying to identify with who they are. And through their challenges, they're not always very confident to come out and help other people. So I think it's so important that you know how special you are and how important the story that you share with your followers every day. You know, there's somebody watching something that you post every single day, holding on because you're holding on, and it's in your truth and in your honesty that makes us realize that if you can do it, we should try and do it as well. So thank you, Mackenzie.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Sometimes it's really hard to digest what strong looks like to your audience. And I'm telling you, you are an incredibly inspiring young lady. And I want to start with the 18-year-old who stands in front of me. She is aspiring to go to university. Well, you're going to start college soon, and you're aspiring to be a park naturalist. Tell us what that is and what made you decide to do that.
Well, I just have always loved being outdoors, and that's always been like a big part of my life. And it's especially I guess I've kind of had to be on bed rest for a decent amount of time, and that was taken away from me. And it made me realize how much I loved it and how just thankful I am for it, and like how beautiful the world is, and just how incredible like it is to have that opportunity and just be able to just be outside. And I don't know, I love research and biology, and that was just something where I could incorporate all of that and just get to do what I love and be around people, and kind of, I don't know, it was something that really spoke to me. So obviously that's the plan as of right now, and it might change because I am still young, but I think that I'll still be pursuing something in that realm regardless of like what it entails.
That's so incredible. And I love how you just said that might change and that's okay, but for right now. And I think that's a really important message to be sharing with young people watching this, is that it's okay to change your mind. Although, you know, young people your age feel like they have to get it right and they need to get it right now because it's the rest of their life that sort of lays in the balance. If they can't get it right, what's going to happen? When on the journey of growing up, did you realize that that was something that you would want to do, but you'd be okay if you wouldn't be able to do that, or if you could change your mind?
I think it was actually after I graduated high school, or towards the end of my senior year, because that was when my life started to kind of shift more dramatically. And I realized that everything wasn't going to go according to plan, and that I still had a lot of growing to do as a person. And by kind of keeping all of these like concrete ideas in my head, it was holding me back more so than like allowing me to grow and kind of like realize who I was. So I think that was kind of when I realized.
Incredible. You're an incredible. I'm going to keep saying it, Mackenzie. I just think you're just so incredible. I'd like to take you back in time, back to when it all started for you. I know that you said growing up, you felt like there was a lot of pressure to fit in and that you were always trying to please other people. Can you remember how old you were when you started to feel that pressure?
I would say maybe around second grade for me, actually. And it kind of started when I was trying to like find who I fit in with and making friends and things like that. And I kind of had more so decided to see what other people like looked for rather than just being myself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of conform to what they see as being like, I don't know, like worthy or like perfect or whatever, or like just this idea that like I had to fit a certain mold to be accepted. And it kind of started from a really young age just because I wanted to fit in like so desperately. And then I kind of carried that with me for the rest of like my life thus far. And it was only until like the past few years that I kind of started to try to break from that, because I'd realized like how much it had held me back, and like how you have to be yourself and you can't just try to constantly like fit what other people ask for. And if you're not doing things for yourself, then you can't love other people to the fullest like potential, I guess.
Wow, second grade. Can you remember being that young? Because to me, that just sounds so young. It sounds like a time when we imagine young girls to just feel really free and playful, and life should be really light, or at least as a parent, that's what I would hope my daughter would feel at that age. Can you remember that time, and what was it like? So for a parent watching this, what was it like for you? Something that they could kind of reflect on in their with their own children, and try to see, because I think sometimes as parents we forget how hard it was to be young, and we forget the challenges, and sometimes there's a lot of comparison, and we say when we were your age it was a lot harder, you're so lucky, or stop being so dramatic, or maybe if you're nicer, if you're kinder. But what was it really like? So take us back, take us to those times of being a young girl, maybe not in grade 2, but sort of as it progressed, teenagehood. What were some of the things that you were struggling with? And did you tell anybody that you were struggling with these things?
So it kind of like rooted from something like within me, like feeling like I wasn't good enough, and like just I guess like perfectionism kind of was rooted in a bit of like perfectionism and like those sort of tendencies. And especially kind of like transitioning into like middle and high school, it's really hard because like everyone's kind of growing up, and like friend groups get clickier, and like it's just really kind of hard to navigate that and just want to like fit in and be seen as like cool, I would say, which is something that like I never felt I was. And it was definitely really hard. But like ultimately like it taught me that like always to lean on my support system, and my parents I am so thankful for, because like they would always kind of remind me who I was and why I shouldn't change and why I shouldn't try to change myself for anybody else. And I have a sister who's really close in my age, and she's been a really big support for me, and like one of the people that like I wouldn't have been able to get through middle school or high school without. And so I think just like for parents and for families, just keeping people like holding your kids accountable and just reminding them of why they are so amazing as they are and why they don't need to change for anybody else. And just making sure that you're always like loving them and supporting them no matter what, I think is the important thing.
That really is the most important thing. Sometimes, though, we tell our children, and I'm sure your parents would have told you, but the problem is Do you really think that teenagers will listen to their parents? Did you listen to your parents when they said how wonderful you were, how beautiful you were? Or did you overshadow what they were saying because your peers' opinions were more important at that time?
Yeah, I would definitely say like I had valued my peers' opinions more so than my parents. But in the back of my head, like I always knew that I had my parents there and that they were gonna support me regardless and just lift me up. And whenever I was kind of hard on myself or struggling with something that had happened at school, then I had them. And like at the end of the day, like constantly having that throughout the years makes you realize how much more important it is. So, like in the moment, I would definitely say that I had placed my peers' opinions higher than that of the people that had actually like loved me and cared for me. But just having those opinions of the people that loved me and cared for me just spoke volumes over that as I kind of learned and grew over the years and realized like where my priorities lay.
So I want to take you back again to some of the things that you mentioned to us. You said that you struggled with anxiety and depression and anorexia nervosa, something that you're still recovering from. When did that start for you?
That also actually started I think when I was in elementary school. And I think it just had to it wasn't necessarily like it didn't spiral into what it like is now, but like when I was in elementary school, I kind of was like weighing myself a lot and like always concerned about my body image. And I didn't really understand it because I was so young, but I always just like felt self-conscious and just it was another, I think, way of me thinking that I wasn't good enough and needing to fit in, but I just was always insecure about it. Um, so
So I'm looking at you right now and I see a beautiful young woman. I see a really beautiful young woman. And I'm asking myself, why? So, and I know that this is a real problem. And as much as we tell girls and boys how wonderful they are, how beautiful they are, how perfect they look, it's so hard for them to take it in and to digest it and to listen and to believe. But we're always curious about, like, how does it start? Was there, and I think as a parent, sometimes we think, well, maybe it's peer pressure. Where did it start for you? And I know you said that in elementary school you started weighing yourself, but how does a young girl that young start to become conscious of that? Was it somebody you knew, somebody you looked up to? Was it what we like to blame right now as influencers on social media or TVs or movies? What was the trigger that made you start to be conscious of your weight?
Um, I would kind of say it had a lot to do with who I am as a person, and I would kind of attribute a lot of it to like a genetic predisposition, but a trigger would probably have been kind of peer pressure and comments that had made me more aware of it. But like it's not to blame, but because I think that it all came down to just who I was as a person and how I kind of took comments that came from my peers and then was kind of just always thinking like, how can I change? How can I be better? Like, how can I be accepted? And it kind of all came back to that. And I mean, I think that like general comments about like appearance and things like that I took to be like, oh, I'm not good enough, like I need to change, kind of started the whole like spiral of like trying to lose weight, which came a lot later. But as I kind of began to research it later, I think a lot of what kind of had happened was like there was the trigger, and then when I kind of started to kind of acknowledge the behaviors and thoughts, then it kind of continued to progress because of the more like biological standpoint of being in a famine. So the body kind of switches into starvation mode, and then it just perceives that there's not an adequate amount of food and everything. And then the thoughts are still there. And like that's kind of it's like it contributes, but at the same time, it's a little bit separate, I guess.
What are some of the symptoms that parents should be looking out for from your experience? Some of the things that you were really good at hiding, but parents should be aware of.
One of the big ones I remember when I was little, I was still in elementary school at this point, and my family was having like a family dinner, and we were having lasagna, and like I was just kind of picking at it and I didn't want to eat it. And then I'd ask my dad if I could be like a vegetarian, and thankfully he said no, because he knew that it was like not coming from a place of like I had to like do it for like health reasons or dietary reasons. Like I wanted to do it because I just didn't want to like have to eat certain foods, even if I didn't exactly know what that meant. So I would say like something is that's kind of a big one, is being like apprehensive when it comes to eating. And that's sometimes a hard one to pick up on, just because of like, I don't know, like eating slowly and like doing things to kind of hide that. And then another one I would say from a more like behavioral standpoint is just being like a little more like self-conscious and like aware of like how other people look, and like body image in that sense. And if you like, because I know I was always like hyper aware of like how other people looked and just comparing myself to other people. And that was a big one that my parents kind of picked up on and like knew that I was doing, because I would always kind of comment on it, even if it was just very subtle, because I just was like trying to change. I mean, I guess like another thing that my parents also kind of picked up on was like I've always had kind of a negative perception of myself and would say like so many positive things about other people, but then if I was asked to like say something nice about myself or something that I liked about myself, like I just couldn't do it. And like I would always just say like these horrible things about myself, and like I would never say that or wish any of those things upon other people, but like I would just say it so like easily to myself. And it was something that I kind of did throughout my childhood, and like I'm still trying to work on now, because it kind of just stemmed from that kind of being insecure and being self-conscious. And like it's so easy to kind of miss that kind of like it's so hard to pick up on, because sometimes you can be like joking about it or just kind of saying it lightly, but it really like just having personally experienced that, I don't think it's something to be taken lightly, because like I know in my like experience I genuinely kind of meant it about myself, but I would say it as a joke, and like it just kind of gives some insight into like what's going on and what's actually happening, I guess.
How dark did it get for you, Mackenzie?
It got really hard. My junior year and part of my senior year were my worst 2 years, especially from more of like a depression standpoint. And yeah, I don't really know how to explain it, but it was just really like a dark time for me, and I'm very thankful that I'm past it now, but yeah.
What were some of the, if you're okay with sharing, of course, what were some of the thoughts that you had going through your mind in those 2 years?
I just didn't want to be here anymore. And it was a lot pertaining to that. Just because I had moved to a new school my sophomore year and had kind of fallen into kind of like a harder kind of friend group situation, and it wasn't necessarily anyone's fault but my own, I would say. Like, and I wouldn't even say like it's my fault, I would just say it's like something just the way that I am, and like the way that I just kind of like handled things, and it just got kind of dark, and like I didn't really see a way out at that point. And again, it kind of came back to like I didn't feel good enough, and so I had a lot of like thoughts about not wanting to be here anymore and potentially acting on those, and I'm so thankful that I didn't. But yeah.
Are you still struggling with anorexia nervosa?
I am. Yes, very much so, but I've gotten a lot better at not listening to those thoughts and not acting on those thoughts. And they're obviously like still there, and they're still very loud, but they've lessened significantly since I started, since I went all in my recovery and started kind of disobeying the eating disorder voice, and kind of choosing recovery every day and reminding myself why I did it.
So what made you wake up and decide that recovery was what you wanted to be doing?
I had been kind of claiming that I was like recovering for a couple of years, and it would always just be that I would like gain weight, and then kind of people would like that were holding me accountable would kind of just ease up on me, just because it was like I had gained weight, so I was acting like I was fine. And then I would end up just kind of falling backwards into like the same just kind of pattern every single time. And then eventually, like this past time, I was like it's taken so much of my life from me, and it's affected my brain, and it's affected my relationships, and there's just so much that I've said that I wanted to do, and I just haven't been able to do that. And life is short, and I don't want to be looking back and like just having spent it all just in my bed because I was on bed rest and too weak to do anything. And like I wanted to do it for myself, but I also wanted to do it for my family, because I'd seen how much it had impacted them and how much it had affected my relationship with them. And so I kind of just took advantage of this. I don't know what happened, but I took advantage of this just particular moment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it right now. Like I'm starting this, and once I start, like I'm not turning back. And it was kind of like recovery looks different for everybody. Some people just suddenly decide to just jump head first, and then for other people it comes more slowly. And like both approaches are just as significant and like just as effective, because it has to be like what works for the individual. But I guess that was what worked for me, instead of kind of just easing my way into it, because whenever I did that, I would continue to find loopholes, and by just like actually committing, I kind of followed through with it.
So when you were going through that time of the peak time that you talked about in those 2 senior years, and you were stopping yourself from eating well and taking care of your body, what were you telling yourself that made you believe? So you talked about the voice of anorexia nervosa. So for somebody that doesn't understand what that means, you know, what is that voice, or how did you identify that, or how did you come to understand that that wasn't Mackenzie talking, that was anorexia talking? And how did you learn to not listen to it anymore?
For me, like the voice kind of looked like, if you do this, then like this will happen, or like if you do this, then something bad will happen. And like there was always a consequence for like acting on something. And I just had this fear of like gaining weight. And I was a competitive runner throughout high school, and I thought I had been constantly seeing on social media that lighter does not equal faster, but for some reason, like I had this just like preconceived notion that it did. And that was just created by like I just created that in my head, and just thought that if I wanted to be faster, then I had to like lose weight. And I'm 5'9", so I'm pretty tall, and a lot of the people that I ran with were not as tall as me, and like I also weighed more, so I kind of just always believed that like I couldn't eat certain things, and I'd seen people who I didn't know were struggling from eating disorders, but I'd seen them kind of eating a certain way, and I kind of adopted those eating patterns because I wanted to be fast. And then it kind of turned into so much more than that, and it just became more about something to do with myself and like my insecurities than actually about food and runnings.
I think that at 18, that you have the wisdom of a woman that lived years and years and years and years more than you. You're just incredibly inspiring. How do you overcome the challenges every day? How do you do it now? Now that you've passed through that dark time, now that you know that your family are here and they're committed to you and they want to support you, and you realize that you don't want to, go through those challenges anymore, and that you deserve happiness, you deserve to be healthy. How do you still overcome these challenges?
For me, how I started was by listing out just all the reasons why I wanted to recover and all the memories that kind of came with that. Like there was a time when like running's what I love to do, and I still intend to do so in college, and like I have plans to do that in college, and like I'm looking forward to that, and like I have a lot of memories of like doing things like that and just being outside and going on all these crazy adventures and just having the energy to do that. And like there were brief moments in time when I hadn't actually been constantly thinking of food and having to just meticulously track every single calorie that I agree all the time. And I didn't want to just constantly be thinking about food, and how most of like looking back, a lot of my memories were more like I were more connected to food than they were connected to the people that I was with, because I was just so hyper focused on like, oh, if like I can't eat this and I can't eat this and I can only eat this much of something, and then I miss out on like the essence of every like all the memories and just what the moment's about, because I'm just so focused on something that's just meant to keep you alive, and you're meant to enjoy it, and it's supposed to be social, and it's something that connects you with people, and it's not supposed to be the entire like your life is not supposed to be about food. Like food is meant to fuel your body so that you can live and do all the things that like you want to. And I just like every day that I know that I'm listening to my hunger and following my body and what my body is craving and telling me that it needs, I know that I'm stepping closer to food freedom and just getting all of those memories back. So
I know that every day you say that you're learning more about yourself and you're learning to accept your body and you're coming out of your shell. You described yourself as a little more introvert, and you want to come out a little bit more. And you're trying to inspire others to choose recovery through their journey. When did you decide that this was important, not just for Mackenzie, but for Mackenzie to share with everybody?
it kind of started when back in November, I think, that was when I kind of started. It wasn't necessarily real recovery, it was more like quasi recovery, but it was kind of when I started. But I had been looking online for like resources and like, why is this happening to me? And I couldn't really find some things, but I knew that I wanted to document it because I was like, I want to be like the resource. Like, I want to be that person for someone who is going through the same thing and can't find like why this is happening, because it's terrifying and like you don't think it's normal, and it almost scares you right back into restricting and not choosing recovery. And like, I want people to choose recovery because like there's a life on the other side for them. And I want it to be normalized, like all the phenomenons that happen in recovery and like the extreme hunger and everything, because I know that it needs to be talked about. And I feel like if it can be talked about more and just normalized, then people will choose recovery and want that for themselves and just know that they can make it to the other side. And I just thought that it was important.
It is so important. There's a parent watching this right now thinking, how do I get help for my child if they won't listen to me? How do I help them if they don't want me to help them? How do they do that?
Well, I definitely would say that there's a lot of resources that I've been able to find on the internet that kind of help parents to understand, and like that would even help the person suffering to understand. And I used Tabitha Farrar on YouTube, and she was an amazing resource, and Kayla Rose. Those were two that I think that kind of illustrated recovery really well. And they did a really great job at kind of normalizing all the things that kind of happen in recovery that kind of seem out of the ordinary, but are actually very normal and very good. And like the biggest thing is just like my parents kind of had, like, we were constantly having like a discussion just so that they knew where I was at and I knew where they were at. And just kind of keeping an open discussion, I think, is really, really important. And just establishing that trust, because like I knew that my parents trusted me and I trusted them. And without constantly being able to kind of talk and communicate, I don't think that I would have gotten to that point, and I wouldn't have been as confident in my recovery. So I think just having people that you can talk to and hold you accountable and just being there to listen is something that I think is really important.
So what does that mean, trust, that you trusted them and they trusted you? What does that mean in the perspective of recovering through depression, anxiety, and anorexia nervosa?
I mean, hold on. Sorry. So for like in my case, I had gone through like treatment, and it was more so like when I had gone through treatment, it was like I was just placed in treatment, and I didn't want to recover, but I would kind of stabilize my weight, and then none of the neural rewiring would actually happen because I wasn't committed and I didn't know anything about why I was recovering or why I was doing what I was doing or why I had to eat the amounts that I had to. And then eventually, like, I kind of, like, this time that I had been in recovery, I did it on my own, but my parents were obviously like supervising and like making sure that I was actually committed and like understanding that I was genuinely committed. And like it looks different for everybody, obviously. Like some people go through treatment and it works and it helps them immensely and that's how they recover. And for others, it looks like the way that I went about it, which was on my own and without medical supervision. But I think it ultimately just comes down to trying to find the best way for the individual. And that kind of element of trust is really important, and having just kind of a team of people that are able to pursue it instead of having to go through something alone, because no one's alone and everybody has people that care about them and want them to be better. And so I think that that's what I mean when I say trust, is just like feeling confident in your support system and knowing that you have people kind of rooting for you and trying to find the best thing for you and listening to like how you're feeling and what you have to say, and like ultimately just doing what's going to get you to the other side.
Are you on the other side now, Mackenzie?
I don't know if I'm on the other side, but I think I'm very close. I don't have fear foods anymore, and I've restored my period, and I eat when I'm hungry. I eat to mental hunger and physical hunger. And obviously it's going to be a challenge, and like every day brings with it different challenges. But the important thing is that I just have no desire to acknowledge them or listen to them, like, and that every day that I choose to do that, they're going to get quieter. So yeah.
I'm so proud of you, Mackenzie.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud of your honesty, and I'm so honored that you're sharing your recovery with us. I know that we can find you on Instagram. Tell us about your account. Tell us all about the things that you want us to know about this journey, because it's so important. You're right. We have to normalize these conversations. We have to create communities, global communities, where young people feel supported and parents feel that they can understand, and they need to feel that support as well. So tell us all about Kenzie's recovery.
So writing has been something that has played a huge role into like every aspect of my life, and particularly my recovery, just because it helps to be able to kind of just sit down and put everything I'm thinking about on a page. And so I've been just writing in my journal forever, and then I started to think that I could turn it into something like this and share what I was writing, and doing so kind of helped me to let go of it and just kind of be able to move past it. And it just felt like as soon as I put the pen to the paper and the words came out, they'd leave my head, and I just feel so much more at peace. And I figured that if I could kind of turn those into like articles and posts that made like sense, like, and more, or just directed at like general recovery and like why things happen the way they do and why they're important and why they're normal, then I don't know, I just hoped that I could help somebody. And I just wanted to be able to see my own growth throughout time. And I didn't expect it to kind of turn into what it did. Initially, it was just me posting pictures of food. But as I started recovering, I became less and less obsessed with food. And I have no desire to kind of post food pictures or things regarding food anymore, because I mean, that was just a form of mental hunger, I think. And so now it's just kind of an outlet for me to kind of write and hopefully help other people. And like, I don't know, just I want to be able to help as many people as I can if I can, and just being able to connect with people that inspire me as well. So
Who inspires you, Mackenzie?
Well, my parents inspire me, and they have done since I was little. I have a couple of friends on Instagram, and they all inspire me, and I've just been so thankful to connect with them. Like and I wouldn't have met them without this platform, and I'm just so thankful for that. And just seeing all the people that have chosen recovery for themselves and kind of been able to follow through with it and documented their own journeys, it just has inspired me, because it's something that like I'd been embarrassed about for so long, and I realized that it was nothing to be embarrassed about, and it just shows how strong everyone is. And like, I don't know, I just am just so grateful for that.
I'm so grateful for you, Mackenzie, and I'm so thankful that you came and you shared this story with us. It's not easy to talk publicly about some of the challenges that we're facing. So just being here tonight, talking to me, someone you've never met before, and sharing it on this platform is definitely helping so many people that will be watching this today, tomorrow, next year. We never know. So thank you so much, Mackenzie. It was such an honor to meet you. Thank you for taking some of your morning to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me on your show. It means the world to me, and like, I'm just so grateful, and I love everything that Strong is and stands for, and everything that you stand. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, Mackenzie. And that brings us to the end of another incredible conversation. Today we spoke with Mackenzie, 18 years old, struggling with anorexia, nervosa, anxiety and depression, and she is recovering, and she talked about her recovery, her journey. And we hope that if you are watching this feeling anxious or bouts of depression, and if your weight is an issue, please reach out. You can reach out to us here at Strong, and we'll help connect you, or reach out to Mackenzie, Mackenzie's Instagram account, which is Kenzie's Recovery. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all next week.